Good evening, group. My name is Lee, and I'm an alcoholic. And I'm very pleased and honored to be here. And let me begin by apologizing. I can't remember who it was that recommended me for this, but whoever it was, and whoever the committee members were that were kind enough to give me this opportunity, I want to thank you before I get started. Now, the way that these kind of events or these kind of meetings usually go, the person that gets the opportunity to do this is the way that it's written and how it works. I'm supposed to tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And ladies and gentlemen, for many years, I thought that meant that I was supposed to tell you about what it was like. That had to do with my drinking. And for that, I want to tell you that the best I can remember, I got drunk the first time I was 15 years old during the holiday season. I was with the guys in my neighborhood. They were drinking. I wasn't. They encouraged me to join them, and I didn't want to. And they said, well, come on, man, it's the holiday and that sort of thing. And I kept declining. And one of the guys in the group thought that maybe the reason I wasn't drinking is because I was a punk. And that's what he called me, a punk. And when he did, the pain in my gut went to my head, and my head said, join him, so you don't be a punk. And that's the first time I got drunk. And for the next 15 years of my life, ladies and gentlemen, I drink anything with anybody, anywhere. There's nothing really exciting about it. I've been in 3 car accidents. I've been arrested. I've humiliated my family. I've done all kinds of things that alcohol does to people. Fortunately for me, it came to an end. By the time I got back from Vietnam, I got a job with the United States Postal Service in Washington, D.C. I was fortunate enough to have met a lady, and bless her heart, to this day, this woman loved me beyond all imaginable love that you could possibly think somebody could have for another human. And the short way of saying that is she knew I wasn't worth nothing. Yeah, she did. And she stuck by me for all of the crap that I was going through. And I'd always get mad at her because she'd catch me lying. I didn't get mad that I was lying. I got mad because I get caught. But she stuck by me. And eventually, what happened to me is she knew a guy that got sober. And she saw what y'all did for him. And she asked him to help me. Now, the people that I was drinking with, these were the people that I drank with, that I trusted, that I listened to. These are the people that, when I now look back, they kind of taught me about life. And it all started with a drink, and it ended with a drink. It didn't matter how much trouble I got in, those were the people that I went to. I didn't go to my parents. I went to the people that I drank with as early as 15 years old. And they kept telling me that it wasn't me. It was the police, it was the supervisor, it was the baby mama, it was anybody and everybody, but it wasn't me. And it certainly wasn't my drinking. Carl asked this guy's name was John. She saw what y'all did for him, and she asked him to help me. Let me tell you what he did for me. On March the 3rd, 1976, he saw me going to Carl. That's the lady that made the difference in my life. He said, son, come here. Now, he called me son because when I got here, I was young. Y'all will figure that one out in a minute. He said, son, come here. And I eased over to him, and he talked real soft. He said, you know, you don't have to live like that anymore if you don't want to. Ladies and gentlemen, I swear to you, I had no idea what he was talking about. No idea. Because I thought, according to me and the people I drank with, I thought I was doing pretty good. I had a job with the Postal Service, all right? I had a car. I had this woman that loved me, fed me, clothed me, bought me liquor, and I lived home with my mama. Well, I don't know what this better like. I don't know. You ain't got to live like that. I don't know what he was talking about. You know how you see the cartoons with the words and the thing? Mine was blank. He said, if you're on your front porch at 9:30 Saturday morning, I got some people I want you to meet. He didn't say anything about a fellowship. He didn't name any names. He didn't say anything about not drinking. He didn't use the word alcohol or Alcoholics Anonymous. He said, if you're on your front porch, March the 5th, 1976, I came to around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. The last drink I had that I can remember was coming out of a fifth bottle of Dewar's White Label Scotch. And I was just about out on this Saturday morning. I live in Washington, D.C., and the liquor stores in D.C. don't open till 10, but the liquor stores in Maryland open at 6. And I was getting myself together to go to the store because I was just about out. And this voice in my head, very clear, just as clear as you all can hear me, I heard this voice say, Lee, if you go, you'll miss John. And I didn't go. 9:30, he showed up, took me over to St. Elizabeth's Hospital. Saturday morning, March the 5th, 1976. From that day to this, I have not had a drink. And for y'all that, like me, don't do math well, I'm 35 days short of 44 years. All right, now, let me tell you, I suspect, I don't know for a fact, but I'll know for sure tomorrow night, there might be some new people in here with us. And my thinking about Alcoholics Anonymous has shifted lately. And where I used to think what it was like was all about my drinking, I've now come to kind of look at it differently. What it was like for me, ladies and gentlemen, when I was brought here, I didn't know anybody. I'd never been around recovering people before. Never heard people talk like you all talk. And for me, when I stopped drinking, my life got different. And the difference was I wasn't drinking and I wasn't drunk. Didn't get better, it got different. Now I'm scared and confused and don't know what to call it. I'm living off of anger and shame because I don't know what to call it. So I'm coming to these meetings on a regular basis and I'm watching you all. And it didn't take very long before I realized how different you all looked than the people I drank with. Now, mind you, on March the 4th, I knew I was a drunk. We used to talk about that. When I say we, I'm talking about the people I drank with. And I had quite an extensive drinking crew. I had the post office crew, I had the pool room crew, I had the alley crew, and I had anybody anywhere that would give me a drink crew. So I go to the meeting, and then I go back to work. And a lot of my drinking was at work. So the people I work with, the anticipated behavior is that we're going to keep going in the locker room, and I'm going to keep drinking along with them. But something happened. By being with you all, something in me changed. Alcohol didn't change. The people I drank with didn't change. But something in me did. And I didn't know what to call it, and I didn't know what to do with it. I just knew I didn't want to drink anymore. Now, if you're new, you'll hear us say words like, well, I'm guessing maybe, you'll hear us say words that maybe you didn't understand, that I certainly didn't. When I was drinking, that 15 years, I didn't know that my thinking about drinking, thinking about who I was going to drink with, where I was going to drink at, how I was going to steal to keep drinking, I didn't know that that was the obsession of alcoholism. The obsession of alcoholism is different than drinking. See, when I drank, alcohol kept me drunk. Alcoholism kept me drinking. And I didn't know it then because I liked to drink and I liked the company of the people I was drinking with. So it all made sense to me when I was in it. But once I got with y'all, very slowly, very gradually, stuff in me started to change. I know something's different, but I don't know what to call it or what to do with it other than come back and sit with y'all. And John told me, now mind you, he took me to one meeting, March the 5th, 1976. Now, the reason that he only took me to that one meeting, because he really didn't want to be bothered with me. Yeah, I don't say that to be funny. By the time he brought me to you all, I had stopped bathing and changing clothes. I was just pitiful. But I couldn't see it because I was in it. And the people I drank with looked like me and talked like me and smelled like me, and they reinforced that it wasn't us. Everybody else was crazy. And I believed it because I was in it. But then I got to y'all. Now I'm in something different. I don't feel right. I don't fit because I don't know anybody yet. I don't understand what you're saying, but there's no denying what I see. And that's what I really want to talk to the new people about. If you're not quite sure you're one of us, if you're deliberating and debating as to whether or not you're this bad, if you're wondering whether or not Alcoholics Anonymous works as a fellowship, I would encourage you to simply start by looking at us. Look around this room. The whole time you're here this weekend, keep watching us and see if you can't see what I saw. And I saw people that look different than the people I drank with. Not necessarily better, but different. Then I'd listen to you all talk and didn't understand what you were talking about. Character defects, powerless, unmanageable. I didn't drink with people that used these kinds of words, and I didn't know what they meant, and that just woke up more shame in me. And my shame would turn into anger. And I guess it's fair to say by nature, I don't know where I got it from, but I'm a very vulgar person. I got a nasty mouth, ladies and gentlemen. And I didn't get it from my parents. I got it from the people I drank with. The events that I thought that I was growing up to be a man, I got it from the men I drank with. What I thought I knew about relationships and about sex and about getting along and getting over, I got it from the people I drank with. So by the time I got to y'all, I was thoroughly messed up and I didn't know it. But I kept listening to y'all and realized how different you talk. And again, I say to the new people, don't judge us, just watch us. And I'm convinced if you stay with us, what happened to me will happen for you. It's sooner or later, somebody's going to say something to stick with you. Now, you all kept telling me among yourselves, but you kept saying that you were powerless over alcohol. I never drank with anybody powerless. I didn't know what it meant, and I had too much pride and shame to ask. So I'd sit in meetings with y'all, and I'd nod when y'all nod. And I'd laugh when y'all laughed. Because I was scared that you'd find out that I didn't know. I came here in what was called at the time, they put me through, let me back up real quick. They put me through high school. And put me through means they gave me a diploma to get me out of there. I dropped out of school in school. Can't tell you when it happened, but when in looking back on it, at some point I decided that trying to learn wasn't important to me. Hanging out was. The most important thing in my life was hanging out with the people that I drank with. So I'd go to school, we'd pool our money together and get a half pint of Gamecock 103. And in my generation, what y'all call 40s, we call bumpers. And we'd buy them and pass them around and laugh and giggle and learn how to play cards and dance and have fun. And I just thought life couldn't get no better than that as a kid. And I never stopped being a kid the whole 15 years that I drank. Now I find myself 30, 31, 32 years old listening to you all talk about how your lives have changed. And all I could feel was fear and shame and anger because I didn't know what to do with myself. It's an amazing sense of spiritual awakening. So I kept coming to these meetings and somebody said that powerless meant, somebody said that powerless meant that they drank when they wanted to and they drank when they didn't. And for the first time it made sense to me as I understand it. Unmanageable, our lives. I couldn't stop stealing when I stopped drinking. Couldn't stop being mean and nasty when I stopped drinking. I just stopped blaming alcohol. And that's what John told me. John said, son, you don't drink no more. So alcohol ain't got nothing to do with all of the rotten, cribby stuff you doing. But I couldn't stop myself. I kept thinking about it, but I couldn't stop myself. But the reason that I believe that there's something somewhere, because every day of my life since March the 5th, 1976, I see it. Again, to the new people, don't judge us. Just come watch us. And I'm convinced sooner or later, you're going to hear something. So I believe what I see, and I started to understand what I heard. My basic premise of understanding Alcoholics Anonymous came from me not drinking and going to meetings. That's what I thought AA was. I memorized some of what we talk about. The reason that we read the preamble, which they didn't do over St. Elizabeth's when I got there, all of this, what I call new stuff, was not happening when I got to AA. But they read the preamble. Now I get it. They read it because they want new people to understand what we're about. The difference between the fellowship, that's the men and women in this room right now. We comprise the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then we have a book that we call our basic text. I don't know if most of you understand this. I just found this out about a month or so ago myself. I happened to be listening to a tape of a guy who was in the very beginning of our development. And what he said in his message was, he said when AA was about 2 years old, and they were fumbling and finding out and figuring out their way, somebody in the group realized that they had the formula to get sober, stay sober, and have a good life. Listen to this carefully. In the first 2 years of the fellowship's existence, with no steps and no traditions written the way that we take them for granted, somebody realized that they had something. So the question was, well, what was they going to do about it? And what they thought to do, that helps us be here tonight, is somebody in the group said, well, how are we going to get the message out to the people that need it? And somebody in the group said, let's write a book. So from 1937 to the latter part of 1938, they put a book together that they called the Basic Text of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's the collective experiences of the first 100 men and women who came here desperate. Ladies and gentlemen, I wasn't desperate. I never wanted to stop drinking. We used to talk about drinking ourselves to death like it was funny. That's how little value I had about my life and how selfish I was about my mother caring about me and worrying about me. Because every one of them 3 car accidents, I could explain that it wasn't drunk driving. I had all kinds of excuses because that's what my life was rooted in, fault and blame. And I'd always get mad when I get caught. Never get mad for what I was doing, but I kept coming. And I can't remember exactly what day it was, but we have a club in Washington, D.C. called the Metropolis Club. And then for a very short period of time, the club used to be located on 17th and R Street Northwest. Not a lot of us left that remember that, but I do. And that was the first time I ever went to the club. And it was on a Sunday morning. And back then I used to smoke cigarettes and drink coffee, neither of which I do anymore. I stopped drinking coffee when I found out I didn't have to. Yeah. In case I didn't say it right, the reason I started drinking because I wanted to fit in, I wanted to belong. It's the same reason I started drinking coffee. I thought that was a part of what y'all did. I ain't never like it, but I kept drinking it. And then I finally told John one day, I said, man, I'm sick of drinking this coffee. He said, son, don't drink it. Now, y'all laughing, but I didn't have enough sense to figure that out on my own. So I'm sitting in the Metropolis Club this Sunday morning, cloud of smoke. I used to smoke cigarettes too. And a voice came back. And the voice said, Lee, stay with these people. Ladies and gentlemen, you are the people that the voice told me to stay with. To me, that was my third step. I decided at that day, even though I'd been going to meetings, I decided that day that I was going to stay with y'all hell or high water. That's my commitment to Alcoholics Anonymous as I thought at the time, because I thought the fellowship was the same thing as the program. So now I don't drink and I come to meetings, and I'm doing a little bit better. I start bathing and changing clothes. Yeah, I did. Getting haircuts, shaved. Yeah, I thought grooming was just for dogs. No, grooming work for people too, Lee. So I'm watching and I'm listening, and I'm watching and I'm listening. Nothing comes before this, because I thought this was the same thing as the program. And a lot of people in AA use those two words interchangeably. They are separate and distinct. The fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous are the men and women sitting in this room, rooms like this all over the world. This program of recovery, those first 100 people, think about this. The first 100 people were meeting without any clear guidelines other than to be able to talk among themselves about the suffering that they had lived through, but they weren't suffering the same way because they came together. And because of Bill Wilson's affiliation with the Oxford movement, he had a basic idea of that he was going to take more than just don't drink and come together. And God inspired him to write them 12 steps. He took the 4 absolutes and turned them into 12 steps. Well, at first it turned them into 6, then they turned into 12. And that's what we swear by, this program of recovery. I didn't know that that's what's going to make the difference in my life. John said, son, if you don't drink and go to meetings, there's a good chance you won't drink. But you ain't got no chance of your life getting better. So what do you mean getting better? By the way, did I tell you I didn't stop stealing when I didn't stop doing a whole bunch of stuff when I stopped drinking. But I keep watching and I keep listening, I keep watching and I keep listening. And John gave me a book, our basic text, and he signed in there, he said, read this good a day at a time, John P. 76. And at the time he gave it to me, I don't know how long I've been in AA at the time, but the time he gave it to me, I could barely read. Remember back there I told you they gave me the diploma? I had stopped trying to learn any education. It was just hanging out. But so much of my life is fear and shame and insecurity, and these are the words that I've learned from you all. I couldn't read the book. I didn't know how to read the book, and I wasn't interested in learning. But I got going to meetings, because in my head I've decided that this is the program of recovery. Don't drink and go to meetings. Well, if you'll pay attention, for those of you that are new, with the way that AA is conducted now, the reason that we read how it works is because we want you to know how it works. That was deep, wasn't it? Okay. Again, the piece to appreciate is the era in which it was written. When they were finding their way, nobody in AA had more than 4 years of sobriety when that book was published. Nobody in AA had more than 2 years of sobriety when the idea came to write a book, to show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is why they wrote the book. They wrote it for us. I want you to understand that. They wrote it for us. They knew we was coming. Yeah, they did. They had the foresight and the vision. So when you hear words like selfish is what I do for me, selfless is what I do for you, they wrote that book for us, ladies and gentlemen. Again, I didn't get it for a long time, but I got it because I kept coming. At the noon meeting at the club today, let me tell you this real quick. At the noon meeting at the club today, I think the lady's name is Kelly. She just led a remarkable meeting, but she started by reading out of the Daily Reflections, 31st of January. The Daily Reflections is all about the first tradition of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for those of you that don't know, let me tell you what, back when this was all coming together, stay mindful of that. When they were feeling their way, people would write AA from different parts. People would write to New York, different parts of the country, asking Bill Wilson all these questions. There were folks in different parts of the country that wanted rules and all of these kinds of things. And Bill was just inspired, let me tell it, I don't believe that a drunk like him could just go from a bum stockbroker to an author. And he didn't, all of his, as Bill sees it, came from us. At that time, he listened and watched, and he figured out through God's grace how to put it in words that could make a difference. At least that's how I get it now. But they were writing, asking all these questions, and Bill thought about it and did what he does. He prayed about it, and he can't listen to what he came up with. Out of all of our differences, our common welfare should come first. Out of all of our differences, our common welfare. There's nothing more important to us than being available to one another. Personal recovery doesn't depend on me wanting to stay sober. It depends on y'all being here for me when I get here. All of you people that might be new, rest assured for the rest of your life, we're going to be there for you. There's not many places on the face of the earth that you can go today and not find us. 192 different countries and all of those different languages. This has to be the grace. There's no human power can do what we've done for one another. So now I've made this decision to stay with y'all, having no idea what my will in my life was, but I knew something different, and I'm starting to like it. I'm starting to like it. I'm still cashing my check at the liquor store. Yeah, so on payday, in the post office, we used to get paid every 2 weeks, and I'd jump in the car with the guys, and Strick's Liquor Store was my bank. I didn't know any better. I happened to tell John one day, "What are you doing, son?" "Well, we're going to the..." He said, "Well, why don't you open up a bank account?" Now, I've been sober 2 years now. You'd think I could figure that one out, too. I opened up a bank account, never having written a check in my life. Just so full of shame and anger. So now I'm writing checks and they're bouncing. Now, 2 or 3 of y'all might know about this. They got this thing called NSF. Now, when they send it to me, so I'm going to the bank just a fussing and a cussing. "Well, what is that?" She said, "Mr. Manley, that means insufficient funds." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" She said, "Sir, you're writing checks, but you don't have money in Mind you, I'm not drinking. Growing pains. Currently I am not just what I consider to be an active member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I have a home group. I got a sponsor and I got a spiritual advisor. I got in need all the kinds of things that AA has presented me with since I've been here. My home group is cosmopolitan. We meet on Mondays and Fridays at 8 p.m. Were it not for this kind invitation, that's where I'd be now. Monday nights we have a closed discussion meeting. A closed meeting is just for alcoholics, just for people that are trying to get there, find their way, to share among ourselves. An open meeting is open to anybody because Bill said we need people to come in and see for themselves that we got it. We got the formula. We're not a secret society. The public, the world needs to know. That's why he wrote what we call the preamble is really our public relations statement. It's not for Alcoholics Anonymous, it's for people to learn about Alcoholics Anonymous. And we want you to know that we're not allied with any sect. Doesn't matter what your denomination is, doesn't matter what your politics. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and become living examples to those that are not quite sure. And maybe by seeing it for yourself, you'll come to believe it for yourself, because that's certainly what happened for me. So anyway, let me get back to my will in my life. I know that coming to meetings was different, and now I'm kind of get a handle on what it is that you all are talking about. I'm still not very good at asking questions, and I didn't know that that was that false pride. Somewhere along the line, this idea of fearless and thorough. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think I've ever heard those two words put together, much less have any idea what they could have meant. And I'm coming to meetings, and on Friday night, my home group, step meeting, we go through 1 through 12, traditions, 1 through 12. So I'm sitting there every Friday listening to people talk about it, and none of it's making any sense to me. But sooner or later, bits and pieces. So when you hear us talk about our stories disclosed in a general way, I used to think that was all about my drinking, but for me it was all about the beginning of my AA experience, of coming to here and not knowing anybody, not understanding what you were saying, but continuing to come. That's what changed in me, even though I wasn't getting it. Now you all talk about this idea that if you come with us long enough, you'll experience what Bill called a psychic change. That's a change in my attitude. That's what a psychic change is for me. My attitude changed, not just about drinking, because not only haven't I had a drink since I've been here, I haven't wanted one. So it doesn't bother me to be around people that drink. And it happens very seldom, but when it does happen, it doesn't faze me at all. Then when a couple of times I found myself watching why they taking so long to drink. But I don't ever think about drinking it myself. So let me get back and forth. Let me go back to the new people. Listen to what they found out. Rarely have we seen, listen to what it says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. I asked John, well, what is our path? He said, for you, it's the next meeting you go to. That's the path. He said, now many of us do recover. Doesn't say all of us. They saw this. Many of us do recover. Doesn't say many of us stop drinking. It said many of us do recover if. Ladies and gentlemen, I swear I'd been in AA damn near 30 years before it ever occurred to me that I had the capacity to be an honest person. It's only been in maybe the last 5 or 6 years where I've been trying to be a better person. I convinced myself to be satisfied, don't drink and go to meetings. Because that's what I thought AA was. And I thought that all by myself. All by myself. I'd go to meetings and talk to myself on the way home. And I was thoroughly convinced that's AA. We beg you, those of us who have been here, we beg you to be fearless and thorough from the very start. The goal of Alcoholics Anonymous program of recovery is to have a good life. It's not to have a lot of time. And I got distracted, and I thought the goal was to have a lot of time. So I turned a day into a week, into a month, into a year, and my time started to accumulate. And so did my familiarity with coming to meetings and having a reputation and meeting people and having fun and all of those kinds of things. Now, the quality wasn't the same. I wasn't quite as bad as I used to be, but I didn't get what Bill and them talked about, that they found what AA really has to offer them. They wrote the book because they want us to have it too. I can't tell you how important that book is. And by the way, if I haven't said it yet, let me say it. Did I learn how to read? Yeah, I did. I read in there. And most of the time I understand what I'm reading. Fearless and thorough. I'd sit and listen to you all talk, Then it finally occurred to me, these character defects that you talk about. I don't know that I ever understood the depth of my selfishness, my lust, my dishonesty, the mean-spirited I am. Because, see, my life is rooted in fault and blame. So it wasn't ever me. And then I realized how quick my feelings get hurt. And that's because I'm selfish enough to want my way. And somewhere in the literature, and I believe it's after how it works, it talks about the actor. that wants to run the whole show, wants the scenery just the way he wants it, wants the people to do just what he wanted, and how much better his life would be if everything and everybody did what he wanted. And for years I kept reading that thinking it was them. But because of you all, it finally got to me. That's me. My obsession to drink was replaced with my obsession to have my way. And it goes on to explain how I can be kind and generous and thoughtful and considerate. Not because I want to be a better and a decent person, it's because I want my way. I get it. And I get it because of the first tradition. Can't tell you how important it is for us to realize personal recovery depends on us. The fellowship was created first. And then Bill and them figured out that this isn't enough. They figured it out for us. They perfected it for us. They wrote it for us. And here we are. So now I done learned these things about myself. The fifth step says, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, I had learned how to pray since I've been here. And when I say that, I mean I've learned how to say the prayers that we say. It took a long time before I would mean the prayers, but I'd say them. Just like we started with the Serenity Prayer, and everybody, I'm right back there again. God grant me. All right, without really trying to understand, what are y'all talking about? Why do you do this every day? And I've concluded that for those of you that are new, the reason we do this every day is sooner or later, it's our hope that you start to get it. At least that's how I get it. And it's all starting to make sense to me now. So I got to a point in my life where I was able to talk to John about what I had learned about myself. And at the time I did it, ladies and gentlemen, I thought that the fifth step was supposed to be about me telling him all of the stuff that I could remember that I was drinking, tearing up cars and stealing and that sort of thing. And he said, no, son, that's not what the step is asking of you. Now, mind you, this is how I got AA. Most of what I thought AA was about, I got it from listening to y'all talk. I didn't get it from the book. And that's how I've recently learned the difference between what I hear in the meetings. Like sometimes you'll go to a meeting. Have you all heard some people say, AA say you got to stop drinking? That ain't in the book. And the reason I know, because I can read now. And I went looking for it. The fifth step, according to John back to me, he said, son, you wrote down what you did. The fifth step is designed to help you understand what made you do it. That's the exact nature. And again, at the time he said it, I didn't get it in terms of understanding it, but I heard it. But I kept coming to meetings. And every now and then I'd read, and sooner or later, I got it. And for me, got it means it made sense. Once it makes sense to me, it's what I call a spiritual awakening. I understand what y'all are talking about. And John told me I can't get what y'all got unless I'm where y'all at. So you can't get this watching football, can't get this working overtime, can't get this having sex, can't get this no place but with us. You can't even go to church and get this. Now you can go to church and get what church has, but you can't get what we got unless you're in the room with us. Again, didn't make any sense because I'm in the habit. For me, the habit has changed into a way of life. Occasionally, you'll hear people in AA say that they come to AA to keep from drinking. Ladies and gentlemen, drinking ain't got nothing to do with my life. I'm not afraid of it, not afraid to be around it. My commitment to AA is rooted in the idea that I finally realized that somebody was here for me when I got here. Almost 44 years ago, somebody was here for me. So I want to be here for the newcomer. I want them to see it and hear it. It has nothing to do with whether or not I talk. It has to do with just being in the room for me, our physical presence. And if you're new, look around. It's a whole bunch of folk in this room on a Friday night. And I'm not sure how many of us in here are alcoholics, but for those of us who are Friday night in a room like this, yeah. So now John has helped me understand what these character defects are that are impacting my life. Always struggled in relationships. And I didn't know it's because I wasn't healthy. I wasn't spiritually healthy and I wasn't emotionally healthy. And most of the time when I made my decisions, I didn't check with him first. My head said, do it. And then when it messed up, then I talked to him about it. And he said to me, he said, you know, son, if we talked about these things before, maybe, because when I would talk to him, by the time I finished telling my side of it, I was always right. And he said to me, y'all sitting down, listen to this. He said, son, I told you he called me son, didn't I? I like that. He said, son, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? And I'm so messed up, I still wanted to be right. But because of y'all, I changed. And I realized how important it is to have a sense of comfort about my life and the impact that I have on other people. Can't tell you the depth of my selfishness and self-centeredness and self-righteousness. And sometimes I can't tell it until I look at my kids or my wife or the people around me, and the expression on their face lets me know that I've done it again. I've acted out, I've been mean, been vulgar, been hurting. But now I'm willing to look at it. I'm willing to own it. So John said, well, now you know what it is, what you want to do about it. I said, well, I thought that's what I was talking to you about. He said, no, man. He said, that's not what the 6th step said. Well, 6th step, I'm talking to you. Aren't you supposed to help me? He said, yeah, I gave you the book, didn't I? Yeah, but I can't talk to a book. I mean, what do you suggest I do? I suggest you do what the 6th step said. Ask yourself, son, are you entirely ready to stop stealing? You entirely ready to stop sleeping around? You entirely ready to stop hurting people? And for some of it, the answer was yes. What y'all laughing at? Let me tell you how I know this program works for me. You remember way back there I mentioned this lady named Carol who helped me by asking John to help me, who loved me unconditionally? Well, after I got sober, she thought that we were going to stay together and live happily ever after because she genuinely loved me. She really did, and she saw what you all had did for me, the transformation. I'm cleaning up now, I go to work every day on time. All that good stuff was happening. I didn't want to be in a relationship anymore. And a lot of that had to do with my because I'm dishonest and lustful. And that was my behavior. Don't drink and go to meetings. So it ain't got nothing to do with drinking. It has to do with who I've learned and found out I was. And I didn't want to stop. I just got tired of getting caught. I don't know how to tell you the difference. I didn't want to change. I just wanted to be more sneaky and more deceitful, more dishonest. And I got tired, and finally one day I could just see the hurt in her, and I realized I just didn't want to do that to her anymore. So I went and I asked John, I said, look, man, I don't know what to do about this thing. Now, unbeknownst to me at the time, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't know I didn't have the courage to be honest, because that's all that was lacking in me. So John said, well, maybe now you're ready for the 7th step. Maybe. He said, but you have to decide if you're entirely ready. And I swear to you, I was entirely ready to stop hurting that lady. And I asked God to help me. Now, don't get confused. I can't tell you when it came, but I can tell you that it came. And I was able to say to her, and by the way, I'm 6'5", and Carol was barely 5 feet. So I said to her, I finally got my courage now, and I said to her, I said, you know, babe, I I really appreciate everything that you've done for me and how good you've been for me, but I really don't want to be in this relationship anymore. And she looked up at me and said, okay. Now, I say that because I still didn't recognize my ego. See, my ego told me she's going to fall to pieces and be all distraught. Sometime after that, she was able to tell me that she's been sick of me. Yeah. Yeah. She said, but she wouldn't quit me because she was afraid I'd go back to drinking. Ladies and gentlemen, that's unconditional love. It's the same thing that you give me every single day. Every single day. I've not stopped struggling, and y'all have not stopped being there. Think about that, if you will. Even if you're not ready to be one of us, stay with us until you do. One of the gauges I would encourage you to use is think about what you were doing and who you were doing it with before you met us. And ask yourself, you want to stay with us and see what we can do for you? You want to go back there? And at the time, it made sense to me. So now I've kind of cleared the air with Carol and felt a little relief. So now when I'm doing dirt I ain't got her to feel guilty about, made a list of all persons. There are people that I lied on. There are people that I lied about because of jealousy and envy. But because I didn't drink with people that used them words, I didn't know what that was going on in me. But later on, because of you all, don't drink and come to these meetings and watch and listen, I finally started to understand a little bit about this constant state of uneasiness. Irritable and discontent, I think is how it's described. But I was able to write 2 people on the list. I wasn't going to put my brother and my oldest daughter's mother. My brother got in trouble and ended up in prison, and that messed the family up. He brought a lot of shame on us. I didn't have any understanding of his situation. I turned what happened to him into hate because I felt abandoned. And I stayed angry with him for years, wouldn't talk to him, wouldn't acknowledge him, none of that kind of thing. But because of y'all, I eventually put his name down, because that's what John said. Just write his name, write the word Lewis. My oldest daughter's mother, when I was in Vietnam, I was sending money home. When I got back from Vietnam, come to find out she was broke. My head said, now we have a daughter. Now, the idea that she was spending the money taking care of the daughter never crossed my mind. I just couldn't figure out why she was broke, spending my money. The depth of my selfishness. But that's what I've come to understand. Making amends isn't about being sorry. Heck, everybody knew I was sorry. The question is do you want to change who you are? And there have been more than enough situations and people that I've wanted to change, and I've been able to change. Not just because of God's grace, but because of you all's example, because I keep sitting with you and keep listening to you. And very much to your surprise, ladies and gentlemen, I very seldom talk in an AA meeting, unless it's like this. Discussion meetings and those things, I sit there and watch and listen, trying to see who's going to say something that's going to help me that day. So now I've made these amends. The book, the literature, the step says, now you've experienced some of the promises. See, if you do what they did, you'll get what they got. I have now had the life experience of knowing a new freedom and a new happiness. I am free of the obsession to drink. Free of it. Don't think about it, not scared of it, don't worry about it. That's a different kind of freedom, that mental obsession of where I'm going to go, who I'm going to get, what I'm going to lie, all of that. Then it goes on to tell us all of these wonderful things that can happen for us, to us, with us, if we're willing to work. And I'm not sure if I told you yet, but I'm lazy. Yeah, I want what y'all got, but I don't always want to work for it. I somehow think don't drink, go to meetings entitled it to me. I just ought to be entitled to it because look how long I've been here. You mean I still got to work? Yeah, if I want what you all have to offer. in the book. I'm learning how to separate some of what I hear from what I read. And I'm involved with a couple of groups at home where we're making the effort to learn out of the book what the people that wrote it for us, what it was like for them. See if we can learn AA their way instead of my way. Because a lot of the times I'll hear myself talking about AA like it's mine, like I wrote it or I invented it. And it's nowhere close to what's in the book. So now I'm more aware of self-righteousness than I've ever been, how mean I can be, how inconsiderate I can be, because that's part of who I am. I'm not ashamed of it anymore because now I know what to do about it. And according to the program of recovery, once I admit I'm wrong, 11 steps says, let me focus, let me ask God to help me, because I want to correct the wrong. I just don't want to admit it. To me, it doesn't make sense to admit the wrong if you're not going to do anything about it. That's what the 11th step does for me. The last part of this is suggesting, because of this program, because of the program, I have a different attitude. And when I have the opportunity to work with new folk, I tell them what John told me. Say, if you'll be on your porch at a certain time, I got some people I want you to meet. And you all are the people that I want them to meet. Thank you very much.